How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the channel. Imperator Rome is an upcoming new game by Paradox Studios that was announced during summer of 2018, and it's supposed to be a sequel to Europa Universalis Rome that was released about 10 years ago. The Imperator Rome devs have been posting regular development diaries for the new game since May, and I have been following them along. I was mildly interested in the game when it was first announced, but as I see more dev diaries and realize the depth and extent of the game, I have become really interested in it, and I'm looking forward to its launch in early 2019. Recently they released the 25th dev diary, and I thought it would be a good time to make a review video of what we have seen in the upcoming game so far. I am so excited and I'm really looking forward to playing this game. So this was the first map that they released, and look at it. It has so many provinces in Iberia. And if you look at the date on top right, it's January 1st, 450. And I believe that's AUC, as AUC was sometimes used in ancient times, which would refer to 304 BCE in the pre-Julian Roman calendar. And that seems to be the start date of the game. 304 BCE marks the end of Second Samnite War, when Rome was expanding its power in the Italian peninsula, which would eventually be followed by ancient unification of Italy. And that makes sense as the game will follow the expansion of Rome. And talking of maps, even though the game's main theme is Rome, the map will contain everything from Iberia to the Indian subcontinent, and from North Africa and Arabia to Scandinavia. That is a pretty big map for that time period. But that's not what got me excited. Here's a comparison of maps between Imperator, EU4, CK2, and Hearts of Iron 4. If we take Sicily, EU4 has 3 provinces there, CK2 has 5 provinces, Hearts of Iron 4 has 9 provinces, while Imperator will have 23 provinces, along with 4 impassable ranges. So we can imagine how big the whole world map would be. Apparently the whole map contains 7,000 provinces. That is a lot of provinces. Also, the provinces that we are used to in other PDX titles are called cities in Imperator. So Sicily will have 23 cities, and each city will have its own population, trade good, and buildings. And then a group of cities will form a province where you can assign policies and governors and stuff. Let's go back to that map again and look at some of its icons. The game has resources, obviously. The first one is gold, which you can get from trade and taxes, and I assume war reps. The second resource is manpower, which is pretty self-explanatory. It will be used to build and reinforce armies, I presume. Then there are 4 more resources, and the devs call these as powers. These will correspond to your character or current ruler's attributes, so they seem like the EU4 monarch point system. And actually, ancient Rome had this idea of Roman virtues that formed the social structure and defined the Romanness of people in a way. And the devs took 4 resources from these Roman virtues, which I think is super cool. First of these powers is the military virtue, the Virtus. It's your military monarch points or military power based on the martial ability of your ruler. Second is the civic power, the Gravitas, and is based on the finesse attribute of your ruler. Third is oratory power, the Dignitas, based on the charisma attribute of your ruler. And fourth is religious power, the Pietas, based on the zeal attribute of your ruler. There's another screenshot from the devs that shows the military power. So here it changes monthly by 6, a base of +2, then ideas match government +1. So if you pick a national idea based on what your government type is supposed to have, you get a bonus. And then Perdiccas Heladid +3. I assume it's one of the Diadochi of Alexander the Great. Diadochi, however you say it, one of his generals, and he has +3 military attribute or martial ability. Based on these powers or virtues, we can tell each character will have 4 attributes. The martial attribute. Characters with high martial attribute will make for better generals. Charisma, which will determine a character's ability to charm and persuade others. Zeal, which leads to more focus on faith and religion. One of the dev diaries also mentions that character with high zeal can call upon favor of the gods. Basically, different religions will have omens for different gods, which gives certain modifiers, like we see in this image. Here, Hellenic faith can give you modifiers on discipline, aggressive expansion, manpower, commerce income, research points, national unrest, tax, and pop growth. Enacting these omens will cost 200 religious power. There are also 22 religions in game. I think that will add a lot of flavor. The last character attribute is finesse, and characters with high finesse will make for excellent researchers and governors. Characters will also have traits, just like CK2, which is super exciting because I love how traits affect gameplay in CK2. Traits can be divided in 4 categories: personality traits such as brave or coward, cruel or merciful, etc. And these traits will affect the character's stats and attributes as well. So my guess is brave will mean more martial score and cruel might mean less finesse and so on. Second category is military traits. This will likely give a bonus or penalty to the martial ability. Third is health traits such as maimed, stressed, lunatic, etc. like in CK2. And these traits will affect how long the character lives, although actual health stats will be hidden. And then the special status traits, which can be earned by actions such as Conqueror. All these traits will obviously have unique game events associated with them. Characters will also have their own personal wealth. Personal wealth is the pool of money each character can use for their own benefit. They will gain money from salary or corrupt practices depending on what office they hold. They will also get income from holdings. A governor can have a holding in a city in province they are governing, and a general can have a holding in a city they have conquered. These holdings will generate income for that character. I'm assuming based on that city's income, it'll be interesting to see how it affects gameplay. Characters have another 4 stats associated with them. First is popularity. As the name implies, this will determine how the people see the character. In republics, a character with high popularity will be more likely to be elected leader. Second is loyalty. It's a measure of how loyal the character is to the state. So if a character is disloyal, they will cause problems for you, and the loyalty will increase or decrease based on the interactions between you and them. Next is prominence, which is the fame of the character. Giving them titles will increase their prominence. And corruption, which means character is more likely to take bribes and such. Characters can be given certain roles in administration such as governor, ruler, commander, researcher, etc. based on their stats. In keeping true to history, only men can hold office in ancient Rome. While other nations might allow for women in politics, we will just have to wait and see. Characters will also have parents, marriages, kids, etc. just like in CK2. So as we can see, characters seem to be a complex game mechanic with a lot of moving parts, which I like a lot. You will be able to interact with the characters in a lot of different ways too, and it will cost gold or one of the 4 powers. So you can assassinate a foreign character or inspire disloyalty in a foreign character. You can also recruit a character from foreign nation and ask them to work for you. You can even recruit a foreign general, which will bring his army to you as well. You can seduce a foreign governor, which will mean they will give you all the income from a province that isn't officially under your control. You can also imprison a character just like in CK2, after which you can banish them or execute them or even sacrifice them if your religion allows it, or you can release them if you want. You can also seek or stop treatment on characters affecting their health. If you're worried about loyalty of a character, you can bribe them to increase loyalty, or you can give them a free hand, which will increase their loyalty along with corruption. Or you can smear the character to decrease their popularity. You will also be able to get loans from wealthy characters. Pay them back if you want. You can also marry your ruler to a character given both are of different genders and unmarried. To increase the popularity of your ruler, you can hold games. You can also appoint dictators during wars, which would allow for diplomacy and other interactions without needing Senate approval. Dictators were actually appointed in ancient Rome when there was a threatening war. However, the power of dictators were extremely limited, and they were obliged to resign as dictator after that particular war was over. One of the consuls, Sulla, played a huge part in reviving the dictatorship and consolidating the power of Senate in Roman Republic. Although he finally did resign as dictator, mostly in keeping with the law, his actions unintentionally led to the death of the Republic. As after him, power of dictatorship was abused by Julius Caesar in expansion of the Roman Empire when he declared himself a dictator in perpetuity. Of course, later he was assassinated in the Senate floor, which followed end of the Republic and establishment of the Roman Empire by his heir Augustus. I find ancient Rome to be fascinating, so you might hear more short stories like this here and there. One of the reasons why I'm really looking forward to playing this game. While we are on the topic, the game also has the Senate. The Senate in-game will have 100 seats divided into 5 factions. Each character in a republic will belong to one of the 5 factions, and every faction will have a leader. Depending on which factor the ruler belongs to, the country will get different modifiers. If it's a civic faction, you get bonus to tax income and cheaper buildings. If it's military faction, you get bonus morale. If it's mercantile faction, more commerce income and diplo rep. If it's religious, bonus omen duration and cheaper religious conversion. And if it's populist faction, you get plus 10% power cost, which seems like the only malice. The distribution of these 5 factions in Senate will determine what you can or cannot do, as you will need Senate approval for changing any laws, for any diplomatic action with other nations, and some character interactions like imprisonment, banishing, etc. So for example, if military faction has a majority seats in the Senate, they will be more likely to approve of wars. If less than 40 seats in the Senate are approving of your action, you will not be able to do it. If less than 60 are approving, then you can push through, but you will gain some tyranny, which seems like it will be another game mechanic. You will also be able to get extra seats for your approval by spending 10 oratory power. However, this would also increase the tyranny factor. In this image, we can see that we don't have enough votes in Senate to declare war against Carthage or to offer alliance, but we can demand tribute or give military access or proclaim guarantee. The Roman Republic was ruled by 2 consuls. This was a precaution taken during establishment of the Republic, so no one person can have absolute power. Romans were obsessed with not going back to monarchy. The Imperator game, however, will only have 1 consul, which is a significant deviation from historical accuracy. But it's sort of understandable. I mean, having 1 character means you can get more invested into it. Plus, I believe there would be a lot of balance issues on how to fit 2 consuls in a game while not making diplomacy super tiresome. So as a Roman Republic era admirer, I'm disappointed at the historical inaccuracy, but I get it. And I hope someday a DLC or mod will add a second consul while still keeping the game fun. The game will also have the next consul called a candidate, like an heir in monarchies. This candidate will be the most popular, prominent character in the majority faction, so probably the faction leader. In government, there are 8 offices that you will have to fill out. These appointments remain till the character dies or till you fire them. Remember the 4 attributes of characters: martial, charisma, zeal, and finesse? There are 2 government offices related to each of those attributes, as you see here. If you pick a character with high attribute for related office, such as a tribunus militum for a character with high martial attribute, it will give you certain perks, 1% discipline in this case. You can also get perks for Senate influence, commerce income, tax income, stability costs, freeman happiness, and health. Appointing someone to an office will increase their loyalty, while firing someone will decrease it. There are 8 categories of law available as well. Each of them have 4 laws, but only 1 can be active at a time. Changing a law will cost 250 oratory power. And like I mentioned earlier, you need to have Senate approval for changing any law. The law and Senate mechanics are only for republics, and monarchy and tribes will likely have their own government system that we haven't seen yet. I mentioned earlier that you would also need Senate approval for any diplomacy actions. The game has fairly standard diplomacy mechanics such as war, alliance, guarantee, military access, and all that. One of the new things here is a defensive league. Basically, smaller nations will be able to join and form a defensive league to protect themselves from outside forces. The defensive league will only take 1 diplo relation though. The number of diplo relations limit will be determined by country rank, and if you go over the limit, all power costs go up by 100% for each relation over limit. Which in my opinion sounds a little extreme, but we will see how it plays out in game. Country rank will be determined by their size, and each rank has its bonuses. City-states will only have 1 city, and they can be part of a defensive league. They will get bonus to commerce income and defensiveness. Then local powers will have less than 10 cities. They can be part of a defensive league as well. Then major powers who have 10 or more cities cannot be part of a defensive league, but they will get a bonus trade route to capital. Then great powers who have more than 20 provinces, and they will get some bonuses such as +2 trade routes. Let's see how trade routes and trade work in Imperator. Trade in game will be very dynamic. Each city will produce a trade good, and you can move trade goods around only if you have a surplus in a province. This is called a trade route, which you can have from one of your province to another, or from a foreign country to your province, given that you have negotiated a trade access. So a city generates 1 trade good, and then for additional 30 population, it will generate another +1 of that trade good. Having a surplus in a province will give you a small local modifier as seen here, depending on the trade good, and having a surplus in your capital will give you a nationwide modifier. Capital will require import routes to import trade goods, and the import route limit will be more for bigger nations as we saw earlier. You can also increase them with tech and economic policies. Creating a new import route will cost civic power though. Income from trade will be based on trade routes and commerce income in province, and the commerce income will be determined by population and can be modified by commerce buildings. Let's have a brief look at that aspect of game next. Each city can have at least one building, and each +10 population will allow for another building. Buildings will give you bonuses. For example, training camps will give you extra manpower and unit experience. Fortress will give you fort levels. Marketplaces for extra commerce, and granary for modifiers to unrest and population growth. You can also build the same building multiple times depending on how many building slots there are in that city. Each city in game will also have some population, and each pop will have their own religion, culture, and happiness. There are 4 different kinds of populations: citizens, who will provide research and commerce income; freemen, who will provide manpower. These were the plebeians in Roman society, the OG plebs. The tribesmen, who will provide a little manpower and some tax income. These represent the so-called barbarians. And finally, slaves, who provide tax income. The population in a city will go up and down depending on terrain, trade goods, civilization value, and during warfare, you can bring pops back to your main capital when you sack the enemy city. These will obviously become the slaves. You can also promote pops to higher class of society by using oratory or religious power. The civilization level is something that each nation will have, and it will be capped by a government type and tech level, and each city will slowly progress towards that civilization level. Pop happiness is something you will need to keep an eye on as well. They will be less happy if they are of different religion or culture, and you can change religion of a pop by using 10 religious power. Happiness will affect their productivity, and if there are a lot of unhappy pops, it will lead to unrest. Unrest in this game is pretty different, and there won't be any rebel spawns because of it. Unrest will rather affect the loyalty of a province, and if there are a lot of provinces with low loyalty, it may lead to civil war if they are of your culture group, or an independence war if their primary culture is different. We already learned about character loyalty, as disloyal characters will refuse to follow your directives. Similarly, army cohorts can also be loyal or disloyal. Army cohorts can be loyal to their commander, which will depend on the commander's charisma attribute. When a cohort is loyal to their commander, the state will pay less maintenance for them, which is nice, as the commander will start paying for them partly. So this saves money, but it also has some drawbacks, as commander with a lot of loyal cohorts will become disloyal over time, causing issues. And you won't be able to transfer a loyal cohort from under their command. Cohorts can be moved between legions and to create new units, and as expected, they can also be consolidated, split in half, disbanded, etc. Another set of instructions you can give them is certain stances which give bonuses to specific unit types. For example, a phalanx stance will mean slower movements for armies, but the heavy infantry defense will be stronger. You can also force march them, which will cause faster movement but higher attrition and no morale recovery. Or unit reorganization, where reinforcements and morale recovery is faster, but it costs double maintenance and slower movement speed. There's also an indication that units will recover slower in this game compared to other PDX titles. There are other army actions that you can perform which will cost some power points, such as Desecrate Holy Site in Foreign Nation, will reduce enemies' omen power at the cost of some religious power for us. And you can spend military powers to create a free man pop in the current city. Roman armies will also be able to build roads, which allows for faster movement speed between those cities. The military will contain different kinds of units that are listed here. It seems like there's a rock paper scissors relationship between different unit types, maybe not completely. Some units such as heavy infantry will require iron trade good to be present, while cavalry will require horse trade goods. And some units like chariots can only be built if you have Celtic or Mauryan military tradition. Military tradition is a new feature in Imperator, which looks really fun. So there are different military traditions in the world depending on your culture group. Each tradition will give bonuses and unlock new abilities and unit types. Each nation will start with a bonus associated with their military tradition, and then you can choose from 3 different paths that have 7 more traditions each. And once you finish the last one, you unlock another bonus. Each military tradition will cost 800 military power, and each tradition taken increases that cost by 50%, while each military tech reduces it by 25%. We will get to technology in a little bit. So since unlocking military tradition costs so much military power, it seems unlikely you will be able to finish all 3 branches in the same game. Let's look here at an example of barbarian military tradition which will be associated with most northwestern Europe, the Celts, the Gauls and Belgae and all that. Their starting bonus is the chariot unit. Then you can take one of 3 branches here. I won't go into full details for each one of them, but to give you an idea, the first one is Britannic branch, which mostly gives bonuses to light cavalry and chariots. Then Germanic path, which gives bonuses to infantry. and Golek path, which seems like a mixed bag. For details, I'll leave a link in the description. Alright, let's look at technology next. There will be 4 different tech fields: martial, civic, oratory, and religious. Each tech level will give a bonus in that category. The research is automatic and will depend on your citizens mostly. Their inventions and some trade goods will increase the speed further. And the tech cost will depend on your total amount of pops. You can also increase the tech progress by assigning a researcher to each tech field. Like we learned earlier, the finesse attribute of this character will impact the research speed. Each research will take 15 years when at 100% efficiency, which will be obviously modified by all the factors I mentioned. Each tech level will also reduce the invention cost by 5%. Inventions, it seems, will give special bonuses, and different inventions will show up at different tech levels. It will cost 50 civic power to unlock an invention, and the cost goes up by 20% for next invention, while it decreases 5% for each tech level. Like other PDX titles, there will also be national ideas you can pick. There are currently 36 different national ideas to choose from, but you can only pick 2 or 3 ideas. As a tribal government, you will be limited to 2 ideas, while republics and monarchies can have 3 ideas as base. The game will also tell you which idea group is preferred by that government type. For example, as Carthage, an oligarchic republic, you should pick 2 civic ideas and 1 oratory idea. If you do that, it will give you an extra bonus, which was the ideas match government bonus. Each national idea will cost 50 civic power, and there's a whole list of national ideas that I won't mention here, but you can look at them in the dev diary. I'll leave a link in the description. Characters are obviously going to play a huge role in game, and I'm really intrigued by it. One of the things a governor can do is issue policies for their assigned province. Each policy can increase income, or help with religious or culture conversion of population, or increase trade, or affect happiness hops by increasing autonomy. You can also increase civilization in provinces using these policies. These policies will be picked by your governor though, which will depend on their personality and the province they are assigned to. You can overrule their policy, but that will cost you some loyalty. And once the governor becomes disloyal, you cannot change the policy in that province. The devs have also hashed out military traditions for barbarians that we saw earlier, along with Italic, North African, and Greek military traditions so far. Let's quickly look at the combat in Imperator. Combat is fairly similar to EU4, where opposing units will occupy the same city, and the first army in the city will be the defender, unless it's a fort. Units will be organized with armies in the center, cavalries on the flank, and range units in the back, and we'll see how well the game deploys units. One of the main differences is that instead of a 10-sided dice, this game will have a 6-sided dice, which means the impact of random dice rolls is significantly decreased. This dice roll will be modified by your leader's martial ability and terrain, and each day, units will fire against the enemy units, and the damage will be calculated by this modified dice roll, along with unit discipline, combat tactics, unit experience, and unit loyalty. And as I mentioned, some units will have bonus damage against other units. For example, chariots will do more damage versus light infantry compared to heavy infantry. Combat tactics will play a major role, where you can choose an offensive and a defensive tactic. And how it's worked is each offensive tactic is great against one defensive tactic and is terrible against one another defensive tactic. So it will be interesting to see which combination of tactics works best. There's a whole list of offensive and defensive tactics, link for that as well down in the description. And finally, they have released the detailed maps of Greek, Italic, and North African regions with all the playable nations. The maps actually look amazing, and the devs have put some effort into writing a backstory for each playable nation. You guys should check them out. All links in description. And that's Dev Diaries 1 to 25 summarized for you. The in-depth characters and the Senate mechanic look very good so far, which I think adds a ton of depth to the gameplay. I will be definitely watching for the next Dev Diaries, and maybe I'll do another one of these videos before the game release. We'll see. So far, the game looks good, and it remains to be seen if it lives up to its expectations. We can just wait and watch for now. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.